Drew here, and I have to say that The Handmaid's Tale really makes a lot more sense to me when I realize that Margaret Atwood hails from Canada. The series has always kind of portrayed Canada as this haven, this Shangri La, and this whole episode as June arrives in Canada, taking a well earned break from the torture and the terror of Gilead. Everything is kind of shot in this hallmarky kind of overly nice and pristine way so that everything just feels like paradise, from the musical choices to the way that everything is just very lush and ripe seeming. But not all is well for June. Obviously, she's still, you can take June out of Gilead as you can a lot of these characters, but there's still a lot of lingering issues bubbling beneath the surface. I do have to say, I talked about this before, but I really do wonder what their plan is for The Handmaid's Tale going forward, because at this point, to me, I would feel very, very frustrated for June to return to Gilead. And I think that that may be what the writers are planning, that they're having this brief respite.
And she's going to take part in testifying against the Waterfords, and then she's going to return to Gilead to look for Mayday, to join Mrs. Keyes, and to go back to fighting. And, you know, from a thematic standpoint, in some ways that makes sense. This season has, as I've pointed out, been a lot about, is it okay to just enjoy life while a dictator is oppressing people, or do you need to stand up and fight? And if everyone kind of says, well, I've got a good thing here and I don't want to mess it up, then dictators thrive. But to me, given that June has not really shown much ability to accomplish anything while she's on the run in Gilead, and seeing how she is having these PTSD moments and, you know, just having a hard time grappling with the trauma that Gilead has enacted on her. And given the fact that, you know, she has reunited finally with Luke and Nicole, I feel that it would be a hard sell for me to convince me that her going back was the right thing, something she would do, and something organic within the story. But we'll see. Maybe the writers can pull it off and surprise me. But it kind of feels like the writers have gone a lot of different directions this season without really committing to the direction that they went, and then they would kind of back up and reverse and go back in a different direction. And that's where it seems like what they would be doing to me if they were to send June back to Gilead, which begs the question, if June stays in Canada, what does the show become? Well, I've said it could focus on other characters, Mrs. Keyes, Janine potentially, and Nick, and other characters that are still in Gilead. They could even, you know, tee up the sequel series, The Testaments, and start using that material here rather than doing that as a separate spin-off series as they announced that they were going to do previously. But to me, you know, all these options, I feel like it's probably more likely that they're going to try and get June back into play in Gilead. And I find that to be a little bit frustrating on the face of it. But we'll have to see. Speaking of forgiveness, I feel that the most powerful scene in this episode by far was the standoff between June and Serena. And as this scene started, you know, the ability of Serena to delude herself into the fact that people don't have negative or anger and frustration towards her, that they don't want vengeance on her for what she's done, that they're somehow okay with her despite all that she's put them through, is really quite remarkable. But I have to say, June basically tells the person that has been, you know, Serena's liaison in Gilead, that Serena will lie and she's motivated only by hate, and that whatever she does you can't trust because she's a consummate actress and she's only in it for herself. And to June's credit, the fact that Serena so quickly runs to back to Fred once she realizes that June and the others are not going to have her back, that they are going to testify against her, shows that she hasn't really repented, because if she had repented, she would want nothing to do with Fred. She wouldn't allow a man like him, or try to help a man like him, get off. If she really, really cared about justice and making things right, she would accept whatever punishment society deemed was just for her. But the fact that she's fighting this shows that she really hasn't accepted her guilt yet. But to me, this moment between Serena and June, it was shocking for how harsh June was in her words towards Serena when she told her that she thought that God had given her her baby so that when it died inside her, she could feel a fraction of the pain that she had caused to the women that were handmaids and Marthas for her. Just a shocking thing to say. And the hatred on June's face as Elisabeth Moss just towers over Serena in this scene. Serena put herself on her knees before June, and June responded with venom. Quite a scene, a lot of killer beats. But to me, I thought the interesting question that this brings up, and I think this is going to be a conflict that the show is going to explore, and I don't ultimately know where it's going to come down. Now, I think, obviously, Serena needs to be punished for what she's done. Society needs to hold her accountable, and there needs to be justice enacted. But putting that aside, I was recently watching a film called The Mauritanian, and in that film, there was a moment where the main character, who has been imprisoned without a charge for years and tortured and has all these reasons to be angry at his American captors, the people holding him, he says that in Arabic, the word for forgiveness and the word for free are the same word. And thus he wants to forgive the people that he views as having wronged him, because that's the only way that he can be free. And I think that you can sense that this is going to be a conflict in the show. But for my part, I think that June, that she needs to find healing. Moira talks about this in the teaser for next week's episode, that, if we hold on to our hatred, if we're constantly going after Serena and people like the Waterfords, then that's not helping us to heal. And June's response is, why is healing the only thing that we can do? Why can't we rage, essentially, is what she says. So to me, I'm on Moira's side in this debate, but I know a lot of people really, really struggle to let go of their anger, and they have this sense that doing so is to let people like Serena off the hook, and they feel that it's right to hold on to their feelings. Now, I can't tell other people how to respond to the trauma that they've undergone in real life situations, and this is a fictional situation, but it's, inspired by a lot of real life type situations. To me, I think that the better thing for June to do, not saying to let Serena off the hook, I would definitely still testify against her, but in your heart is to forgive her and to allow yourself to heal. That's what I think, for what it is worth in this situation. But regardless, I felt like this was an interesting episode of The Handmaid's Tale. Like I said, we got to see June in Canada, and very much a lot of the things that you would expect to happen this episode didn't happen exactly. I felt that there was going to be a lot more tension in her relationship with Luke, but she's, it's not like they had an immediate return to normalcy. I think that it would be really, really unrealistic for that to happen. And it didn't really seem like Luke expected that. He seemed to have very, very reasonable expectations for June, giving her her space, not immediately expecting a return to physical intimacy, just, being understanding of her and her struggles. And, the way that he stood up for her and got her to be allowed to come home rather than to continue to talk and to testify about what happened in Gilead, because he knew that she needed to see her daughter and to have much deserved rest. I feel that he is being a very, very good husband to her in this episode. And, the sadness of the way that they bring this up, how their character's understanding of sexuality has been tarnished by Gilead, and their ability to just enjoy physical intimacy as the gift that it is. It's something very tragic. And it's interesting that June suddenly comes home and is able to have seemingly not very intimate, but at least fulfilling, from a certain perspective, physically fulfilling sex with Luke after she has gone and said her piece to Serena, showing that she's kind of, for her, she's not going to be able to put aside her PTSD. She's not going to be able to have any kind of peace until she testifies against the Waterfords and puts the demons of Gilead in their place. To me, that was an interesting way to go with that. I thought the scene at the store where she was struggling with the specter of Gilead as she sees these two women, that causes her to have these flashbacks to Gilead and the oppression she experienced there. For a second there, I thought that they were going to make some kind of a statement about, the comparison between certain religious rulerships in the world today and, certain religions and the oppression of Gilead. I think the comparison is obviously there in the subtext, and always has been, but they kind of backed away from that because they showed these two women at the store to seemingly be happy and not seeming very oppressed the way the women were in Gilead. You never saw handmaids laughing like that at the supermarket. They were always too much under his eye to have that kind of a leisurely moment. But regardless, I thought that these flashback scenes, again, Elisabeth Moss is such a fantastic actress, and this episode lets her go through so many emotional beats. Really, really fantastic. So to me, this was another solid episode of Handmaid's Tale. I'm really curious about the future of this show. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know where you think the show is going and where you would like to see it go, if you are ready for them to move on from June, or if June taking a back seat would cause you to depart the show. Let me know if you're interested in seeing them adapt the Testaments. If you're interested in seeing other upcoming reviews on this channel, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching.